This is video 3 of Strava Motivates. I was just about to say Strava Educates. But Strava does educate, so it's apt and it is a prime thing to say. So I debuted my YouTube channel recently and I have done 2 videos so far. One that has been posted, and this is the third one. And so this series is Strava Motivates, and I'm going to talk a little bit about acceptance. Now, the topic of acceptance wasn't really what I had intended to talk about today, but it became something to look into. In video 2, I looked at the reality of persistence and perseverance, and how perseverance can also look like being obsessed with doing things or being obsessed with trying to figure out how do I get something done. But in this video, I want to talk a little bit about acceptance, and acceptance as it becomes um, evident, as was discussed in an article by the the Village Family Center, I think that's their name. They did an article in 2021. And in that article, they tried to give strategies on how you go about accepting situations that you cannot change. Now, I thought that was an apt topic because in everyday life, there are circumstances and issues that come up that will cause us to wonder, will I be able to accept this? And if I can't accept this, what are some of the strategies I can take or do in order to be able to cope? Now, what is acceptance? Acceptance in layman's terms refers to identifying a situation that you're in. It may be a situation that you're in, that's the right way to put it, and you're trying to figure out a way to cope, but coping in the sense that you have come to the understanding that this is a situation and there is nothing that you can do about it. And so, in this regards, acceptance is, coming to grips with an issue, an incident, or something, and finally saying, okay, this is what it is. I can't do anything about it. And if it's a case that I can't do anything about it, how can I accept or cope or change? I'm still getting used to positioning, so it looks very comfortable. But over time, the video qualities will improve. It's different when you're doing videos for educational purposes because you typically have content. You typically have content educators and so on, or content preparers, or individuals who create content. See, I am out of speaking about the educational I'm out of speaking about the educational realm, and so this video is not going to be based on that. So the reality is, when we are looking at acceptance, as was mentioned before, there are strategies that you can use to cope. Sometimes the issue of acceptance comes about when, oh, and see, I am glitching, it's almost glitching in the matrix. The issue of acceptance, and I'll say it again, comes about when we face circumstances or situations that would cause us to not operate the way we would normally operate. It might be hearing bad news, it might be being faced with a situation that you never faced before, and accepting the situation as it is one of the first things that we can do to kind of cope. So how do I get to the point of acceptance? Now, we don't get to acceptance just by merely telling ourselves to accept the situation, even though that can be helpful at times when we find that we're in a situation that we don't know what to do about it, but we have to do something to change the way we think and the way we operate in order for us to cope. And sometimes there are mental processes that we go through. We tell ourselves that, okay, maybe if I do this, the situation would change. If I change this particular formula, then the end result would be different. Now, as was mentioned in the first video, the second video rather, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. So if you're seeing a particular track record of something happening and you're thinking that by thinking or changing the way you think, things will modify, things will change, things will become better. Things don't become better because you wish them so to be. things become better because you make a decision, a conscious one, to ensure that things change. Now, how do we cope? One of the ways that we can cope or get to the place of acceptance is one, identify what the issue is. Because knowing, it is said that knowing is half the battle. Once we know what the issue is, then we can find ways to deal with it. We can find ways to walk away from it, or we can find ways to adjust and accept. Now, we can make a checklist of what is going on. Sometimes making a mental checklist or a physical one helps us to cope with the situation. Now, coping is not self medication. Self medication might be for some people imbibing, or for other people engaging in excessive work or duties or anything that will soothe the issue. That is not really acceptance. What that really is you are diverting from what the real issue is, and you're finding a coping mechanism that doesn't allow you to deal with the issue. So when we talk about acceptance, we want to frame it in the right way. What does this mean? Acceptance for everybody will look different, and acceptance for everybody will take time. How I deal with a particular issue might not be the same way somebody else deals with the same issue. I might take weeks, months, days to come to acceptance of something. Other people might not take so long. There are instances where a person might take years depending on what the issue is. It may be a trauma, it may be something that was so devastating and hard to deal with that it takes years to accept the situation, move on, find realistic ways to cope, and find ways that engender growth. So, in a nutshell, acceptance looks different for everyone, but one of the first things is identifying that there's an issue or something that needs to be overcome, and coming up with a strategy or a technique or tip that helps you to cope. The very, very first step in the battle is understanding that there's something that needs to be dealt with. Sorry. And once you identify that issue that needs to be dealt with, and you come up with proactive strategies to get it done, what you will find is coping becomes a little bit more easier. And while you may not immediately accept the situation, you can find strategies to help you live a more balanced way, find alternative things that you can do to either alleviate the issue, come to grips, or come to terms with the issue. The fact of the matter is, you want to exercise patience with yourself, because patience with yourself is going to help you to get to that point where you feel comfortable. It may mean after a period of time that the issue that you're struggling with or the issue that you're having a problem accepting won't be that big anymore, because one, you'd have taken the time to process the situation, and you'd have taken the time to find ways to cope even though the situation might seem hopeless. So, by first accepting and looking at the situation from an objective standpoint, and sometimes it may mean that in order for you to cope, in order for you to accept the situation, in order for you to be able to identify if it is something that can be changed, if it is something that can be adjusted, if it is something that you can get help with dealing with, you first have to accept that there's an issue and realize, recognize, identify that there's an issue, and think about proactive ways to deal with the issue. Sometimes getting help is very helpful and useful, and that is something that can be recommended depending on the situation. Sometimes the issue that you're having a problem accepting is not something that warrants that level of intervention. It may mean talking to a friend, depending on what it is, talking to somebody that you trust, because you never want to share information with individuals who are going to exacerbate the situation or otherwise make the situation worse. So as you try to cope with your issues, or you try to cope with any trauma or anything that you're trying to accept in your daily life, recognize that this is something that you're not used to. Be patient with yourself. So I would say time yourself, give yourself time. And if the time that you're given is not sufficient, know that you can still overcome the issue, even if it means that you have to seek help. here's Alexa telling me it's time to meet my reading goals. So I hope this video has been helpful, and see you next time for Strava Motivates. It has been a good one.